Alright, we're recording. Alright, good morning, guys, girls, guys, everybody. So, we're going to start a new series. We're going to basically call it Shop Talk. So, we get a lot of questions on a daily basis, just random stuff. So, it's stuff we talk about over and over again. So, we figured we'd try to put that information out on the internet. We'll probably start doing this once a week, maybe once every other week. Try to. So I'm Nick, owner of Pewnitions Factory. Beside me is Trey. He's
Hi.
our local gunsmith slash professional, somewhat, shop talker. So anyway, we're gonna start this week's off with the difference in good parts and bad parts in ARs. What the important parts are, what we like, etc., etc. So, no set time to this. We're going to talk till we're done, and it's going to get posted unedited. We are open, so if you hear some background noise, just please excuse it. But we're going to do the best we can. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're talking about good parts versus bad parts, right?
Yeah.
So what is your main take of good AR parts versus bad AR parts, or I should say, we'll say cheap slash budget AR parts?
Well, I mean, you got to kind of define what you're going to do with the rifle. So, I think that, I'm kind of a buy once, cry once kind of guy, if you will, but the difference, in my personal opinion, between crappy parts and good parts is negligible enough to just go ahead and buy the good stuff to begin with.
Right, price-wise. Yeah,
Price-wise,
cost-wise,
like money-wise, you will be so much better ahead if you buy the decent parts first, and it makes your experience in shooting much more fun, because that way you're not having to mess with the weapon system. If it's, if you're constantly dealing with, problems with the gun, then it's not going to be fun to shoot. And I think that if you just go ahead and get some good parts to begin with, you'll be way ahead. And also, we're not talking much money difference, between the stuff out there that I see on a pretty regular basis that's not really good, and the stuff that's pretty stinking good. And that's what we try to preach, is just, hey, you're going to go out and shoot your gun a lot. Let's do something a little different, especially if I have customers come in, they want to build a rifle,
Right.
Well, let's kind of point them towards something that they don't have to, this thing will last for a long time. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
So it's kind of like, we probably got a lot of guys that work construction. It's Walmart boots versus, a good pair of boots.
100%.
It's
100%.
Yeah, it's more money up front, but overall, you're going to save money and have less issues to begin with.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think one of the things that's kind of funny, and I've heard this many, many times, there's lots of folks out there that's got multiple firearms, multiple of the same thing.
Right.
I'm even kind of guilty of it. But you can have 5 rifles that are suboptimal at best, or you could have a couple of really good rifles that you never have to mess with.
Right.
That's, you see what I'm saying? It's like, kind of help yourself out a little bit,
Right. And so what's the biggest difference you see in, say, let's take bolt carriers, for example. And you guys are going to hear us probably talk about Sons of Liberty a lot. There's a reason for it. Number one, it's not because we make more money on it. We actually make less money on a Sons of Liberty part, but there's a reason we use a lot of them. So we're not marketing for them. We're not sponsored by them, but you're probably going to hear us talk about them a lot. But, like bolt carrier groups, let's just use that as an example. Say, a Sons bolt versus, your budget barn, what do you say, Wish.com?
Wish.com.
Wish.com.
What I call the
Wish.
Wish.com parts.
Yeah.
Those dudes at Sons have got it figured out. Like, they build extremely hard use stuff, and I personally run their stuff, and it's, from a metallurgical standpoint, that's what most people don't understand, is I can leave 2 bolt carrier groups right here on the bench in front of us, and you can't tell the difference.
Right.
Metallurgically, you can't. You don't
unless
know.
unless
It's like,
there's like a brand
yeah,
name on it.
yeah.
you'd never
Unless
know.
if they were naked and they didn't have a word on them or anything, you couldn't tell the difference. But there is a vast difference in bolt carrier groups. Suns like uses 158 Carpenter steel, which is the industry standard for a good bolt. Um, Even things like springs and spring tension and the metallurgical properties of the springs for the extractor, the gas rings, all that stuff.
Right.
It all matters. There another good example would be we get a lot of customers, unfortunately, that cram a 300 blackout round in their 5.56 guns,
It's very
and
common,
they
yeah.
bring it into us, and something catastrophic has happened. We
It
had
will fit, by the way.
Yeah, it will fit,
300
and-
blackout will chamber in a 5.56.
and that's one of those kind of things that I try to preach to the customers as well. If they're going to go that split caliber 5.56 gun and then they're going to have a 300 blackout shorty or whatever, they need to really, really pay attention to what ammo goes where, and to make damn sure they keep those two weapon systems and their ammunition separate, because they are unforgiving if you put a 5.56 round or a 300 blackout round in a 5.56.
Yeah.
You can get away with it a little bit if you dropped a 5.56 round in a 300 blackout, because you got a fatter hole barrel. You're going to get a keyhole, whatever. You're going to have less of an issue, clearly suboptimal. But what you're going to run into is 300 blackout in a 5.56 barrel is going to come apart.
Yeah.
And
I wish I still had it. So that 150 grain projectile is now about, I don't know if anybody can see, it's about 6 inches long by the time it comes out of the barrel. So we had one laying around from that particular case, but yeah, so it's a lot of pressure. But
it is. But to kind of piggyback onto that, I've seen where the bolt carrier group, which is, in my opinion, the heart and soul of the weapon system, okay? If I'm going to, I kind of like to look at it like this. I don't really care whose receiver you have. I really don't care about the upper, really don't care about the lower, as long as they're in spec. But the things that are most important to me in this order are the bolt carrier group, followed directly by the barrel, followed directly by whatever buffer system you run in the weapon system. So, bolt carrier group, we've already kind of touched on that. Barrel is extremely important. Barrel is, we're talking gas port, we're talking dwell time, depending on whether you have a carbine length gas system or a mid-length gas system, rifle length. And buffer system really, really kind of all integrates into one kind of happy, cohesive thing. And sometimes, these can be a little persnickety in the fact that getting these parts to match up and meld well, takes some forethought. And you can't just really, everybody loves to call AR platforms the Legos for the big kids,
Yeah.
but they're really kind of not if you're not really paying attention. If you're wanting to kind of do some what I call Gucci stuff, like you gotta really pay attention to what you're doing. So we've had guns come in that that the customer fired a 300 blackout with a 5.56 Suns gun, and the only thing it did is did it even blow the extractor out?
It bent it.
It bent the
Bend
extractor.
the extractor, and then we beat it out, throw the barrel in the upper away, and then Suns replaces it for free.
Yeah.
Like,
It's one of the funniest things
Well,
about
if it's the Suns barrel, they replace the barrel for free too.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of funny. Like Suns is like we warranty stupid as well, and that's it's you can't the guys at Suns want you to go out and try to shoot the crap out of these rifles and try to wear it out,
Right.
and nobody's going to shoot them enough. Like they're just not.
Yeah.
Like unless you're a tier 1 asset out running and gunning 50,000 rounds a year,
Yeah.
you're not going to do it. Like
Yeah, and
those guns are so hard used.
and not only that, like the one we had come in that wasn't a Suns bolt. So we've had 4. Yeah, 4 come in. So 3 of them were Suns. Bent extractors, yeah, you got to beat them apart, but you can get them apart. Sent them back free new bolt carrier group, whole thing, no questions asked. Like it's as easy as an email. We usually have a return label in an hour.
Yeah.
The one that wasn't, the whole carrier pretty much banana peeled off.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably what you're getting at.
I am getting at that.
And
So
and there wasn't a brand name on it, so we don't even know who it was. It was just a blank bolt carrier group.
yeah.
But it was literally split in half.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them where the bolt carrier group separated, like the bolt separated, the carrier separated, like peeled like a banana, and then blew the starboard side of the gun out, like where the ejection port and the forward assist just
Right.
separate that and peel that back from
Yeah.
from the receiver. And man, talk about dangerous if you're up on that gun. And we all know that shoot these guns, how close you are to all of those workings.
Yeah,
That
to
could
the
get
bang.
really ugly really quick. So
Yeah, and you know, it's like, and what you're talking about, minimal price difference, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's about a $50 price difference in general. You know, well, if you just went through this scenario and you just got a free bolt, you know, your $50 is paid for more than once.
Oh,
you
oh,
know, so.
yeah,
But like you said, you have less problems to begin with because the metallurgy's right. The tolerances are right because
Yeah.
there is tolerance stacking. Well, we can get more into that later on in a different video. But tolerance stacking, if you have a bunch of bad parts, could work out to where they work good together, or it could just stack to the point the gun doesn't work at all.
yep,
The other thing you were mentioning was like port sizes on barrels. So you want to get into that a little bit. I mean, we ain't got to go into it, you know, huge, but the difference in a good barrel with a correct port size versus, you know, a budget AR, and we'll take Radical or Diamondback for example, right? In no way bad guns. If you shoot, you know, 500,000 rounds a year, it's probably the gun for you, right? You're never going to outshoot that gun. But if you're putting, you know, we do a class, we go through 500,000 rounds in a day, you know, and we do this a lot. So, you know, when it comes to port sizes and stuff like that and gassing of the gun, to you, what's the biggest difference you see in that?
Well, you know, back when I first got into all this, there wasn't a lot of guys running suppressors, and you go to a class and you'd have, you know, 16 students or whatever, and nobody's running a can. You know, that's not near a big deal as it is now. You go to a class now and everybody's pretty much running a can, and I love that because it makes it for a much smoother. You know, if the gun's set up right and you're running a suppressor, it makes for a better training environment. Also, and that's just one of the little things about it, but the good guns, the guns that are built to run hard, excuse me, are a little bit overgassed to begin with. Most fighting rifles are all overgassed. I don't care who manufacturer it is, whether it's Knights, whether it's Suns, whether it's Colt, whether it's LMT, they're all a little bit overgassed, and they do that for a reason.
These built to run in.
They're built to run in austere environments,
yeah.
exactly, and so they're a little bit overgassed, and that's important. So you start to run a suppressor, and if you haven't had a lot of time around a suppressor, what happens is now you're running all of the stuff that comes out behind that bullet. It's hitting the suppressor and then coming back into the gun. So you're even getting more gas and more crud and more junk and things like that. An overgassed barrel is designed to help you run that gun suppressed and designed to kind of mitigate some of that crap coming back in your face. It's still going to come back, but we're not talking about flow-through technology on suppressors. It's a whole different thing, but you're going to get more crap in your face. We joke that after a class we all look like raccoons, right? Because we're running hard guns, and we've all got eye protection on and ear protection, and we're all running suppressed. And by the time it's all said and done, we all look like raccoons.
And like me personally, I'm running a shorty.
Yeah,
I'm running
I'm running
a
11.5, running Mark 18. So it's you're even going to get more gas. So. With that being said, the gas port diameter is critical for that gun to have longevity of function, in my opinion. You know, to continue to run in austere environments. You know, a lot of these guns that you buy that are, you know, these $500 or $600 guns, they could be really, really tight in the gas port and they'll work fine. But the second you go to try to suppress that gun, you may start running into troubles.
Or they're like really, really over gas.
Oh, they're
like
or like they
overgassed.
can be they can be the opposite of that. They can be extremely overgassed.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, if you set the gun up right, and that's why I'm just a huge proponent of building your own and building a good gun correctly. And so if a customer comes in and he's like, hey, you know, Trey, I want you to build me a good rifle that I can, you know, that'll run a long time and I can go do the class with or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, man, I got you. It's going to be what we call a rack grade gun, but it's a rack grade tier 1 system. Like, it's going to run.
Yeah, because all our guns, we beat them up. I mean, they're spray painted and scratched up.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tool.
It is a tool.
It's a tool for us. I mean, you got Gucci guns, but then you got Gucci guns that look like trash cans.
Well, yeah, and you know, but we've all
run.
seen it. We've all seen the Gucci guns fail too. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, nobody is higher than the other in this game, with the exception of people that build parts to a particular spec that I feel like are just going to run. And you know, bolt carrier group, barrel, gas system, if it's all set up and running, it's going to be fine. Yeah, we all kind of live with the whole, you know, over gas system and getting stuff back in your face and all that kind of stuff. It's not a big deal, dude. Like, it's just not. I don't get too wrapped up around the axle about that. A lot of people are like, well, can you put an adjustable gas block on there so I can kind of, I'm like, no. Don't do that.
I was about to ask you about that.
No, don't do that.
It should run suppressed, unsuppressed, without adjustable gas block.
Yeah, and you know, you get guys, and I see a lot of that in the bigger like AR-10 platforms, you know, where they'll put put adjustable gas blocks on it. But the 5.56 guns and, you know, 300 blackouts and all the, you know, centerfire, if you build the rifle correctly, it does not need an adjustable gas block at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's a hindrance because
it's more to go wrong.
It is more to go wrong, and now what it does is it takes a lot of the simplicity out of like troubleshooting your rifle to kind of figure out if you're having problems. I think that adds another step to the complexity of it.
Also with accuracy, because we've had them come in, and you'll notice like you're going to sight in a gun, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting in, you're getting close, and then all of a sudden it starts going everywhere.
Right.
I mean, the thing's moving 6 inches at a time.
Yeah.
And what it is that adjustments loosen up, and every time you shoot it, the gas setting changes, and that gas setting affects accuracy, like, substantially. Like, it's pretty amazing how much just the gas setting can move your point of impact.
Yeah, you starve a gun with no gas coming out, and it just goes poof. You know, you got light, you know, bullets coming out, and then the thing overgasses itself, unbeknownst to you, and the next thing you know, you're sending rounds, and now you've got this big margin of error downrange on your target. It's like, what the heck? You know, and you're having to fight that.
Yeah, and then the other thing we do a lot of, you'll see us run A5 gas systems. So just so everybody knows, because we get a lot of people that don't know what it is. So you've got your normal carbine buffer system, right? And then you've got a rifle buffer system, a little bit longer spring, longer buffer. And then you've got an A5. So what A5 is it's a hybrid. So your buffer tube is in between carbine and gas, right? You're using a rifle spring and a hybrid length buffer. So it's also in between a carbine buffer and a rifle buffer in length. But it is also usually heavier. It's usually an H2, which is even heavier than a normal H2. But it makes the gun run so much smoother. And it'll also run cheaper under pressured and over pressured ammo that you probably couldn't run beforehand.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, you know, everybody tells you, like, what's the perfect ejection pattern on a rifle, you know? And I'm like, well, everybody loves the 4 o'clock, right? Everybody wants that case to leave the gun at 4 o'clock position all the time. And, you know, depending, that's kind of everything being equal. You know, you're running good ammo. This is where these guns probably have more trouble than anything. Is the level of ammunition quality out there
has declined substantially since COVID.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, we've chronoed rifle ammo that out of a box of 20 had a 300 foot per second deviation between the first round you fired and the 20th round. It's like, whoa.
And there's also brands we won't use right now because they're really good at blowing up guns.
Yeah.
Not going to mention any names, but
yeah. And they don't even care anymore. It's like used to back in the day. I remember, you know, we get a customer that had a you know, bad detonation in their gun or whatever, and you just call the ammo manufacturer. Oh gosh, we don't want to have that. Well, and now it's just like pound sand. Yeah, it's like they don't care. They're like, yeah, sorry for your bad luck. You know, try next time. Try better.
So, but yeah, so back to the A5 buffer tube. How like functionally does that change things? So now that I've went over what it is, to you functionally inside the weapon on the firing cycle,
so
what is it actually?
The A5 is really, really good at slowing the buffer speed down, or slowing the bolt carrier group down a little bit. It gives that bolt carrier group, as that bolt carrier group slides back after you pull the trigger, bang, gun goes off, bolt carrier group starts moving back into the buffer. What it does is there's more travel, okay? The buffer's a little bit longer, but it slows everything down instead of snappily. It's kind of a terrible term, but if you have the guys that know of shooting a carbine versus shooting an A5 system will know kind of what I'm talking about. So carbine buffer systems are snappier on a short gun than they are on a longer gun.
So fair to say it takes some of the violence
It takes the violence out of it. It slows everything down,
right.
And it makes the speeds of that bolt travel kind of equal from one end to the other versus just this slam, slam, slam. Right. And then you get a light gun or a light round and it's kind of poof. You know, it's like it's you know, it really, really helps, and it helps with it kind of helps in forgiving those kind of dirty gun / kind of crappy ammo scenarios you could run into.
Because it also when you're bringing in the next round, it adds travel and mass, so you've got more punch to get the next round.
Strip that round out of the magazine to go back into battery.
Yeah, so
exactly.
if you got a dirty chamber, it really kind of powers through that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We don't see it near as much, but I'm sure people that watch this will remember back in the day when, you know, you get a lot of that old Russian stuff, and there's still a lot of it around, that old Russian ammo that used to come in, or wherever it came from, Belarus, Ukraine, wherever it came from. Yeah. And it had a kind of a
lacquer coating,
lacquer wax kind of stuff on it, and that stuff gets hot. You go to running that ammo in a gun, and that gun gets hot, and that stuff starts to stick, right? And it starts building up in your chamber, and, you know, that will kind of help defeat some of that and keep that gun running, just because it's got more throw and more forward punch and stuff like that. But that ammo is still not great, just by the design of the weapon system. You know,
and ammo and AR platforms specifically, it's built to run on brass.
It is,
believe it or not, the round actually flexes a little bit going into the chamber.
There's a ton of videos out there, man. It's like you watch a slow motion video of an AK fire, and those are all steel cased, right? You don't see much brass. I've seen very, very little.
A lot of them don't like brass.
Yeah, like I've seen, I've seen very, very little brass case 7.62 by 3.9. Very, very little. It's all steel case, and the whole gun is like in a slow motion video. It's doing this, you know. Whereas a AR platform, that gun's rigid. Like it's much more accurate, and because the case itself in a slow motion video is flexing to get into that chamber.
And when you run steel case stuff, the steel does not flex.
Right.
Like
so you kind
brass,
of if you think about it, you got AK-47, the whole gun's doing this. Yeah. The ammo's not flexing, so the gun's flexing with the ammo. Opposite, NATO stuff, ammo's flexing, gun stays rigid, if that makes sense. You know, it's kind of the exact opposite. That's another reason why I don't see a lot of the AR style 7.62 by 3.9 guns running really good. I mean, I just haven't. You know, like I bought an AR, cool. Well, I got 7.62 by it's chambered in 7.62 by 3.9. I'm like, ooh, okay.
Probably gonna have problems.
You may or may not have some issues, but you know, I digress on that. But it's just you know, the buffer systems are really, really are really good at helping you kind of slow everything down. And what also they really help to do is when you've got kind of what everybody likes to run now is these mid-length gas systems, and I love a mid-length gas system.
Right.
Most of the guys that are running mid-length gas systems are running them on a 14.5 barrel, 13.9, 13.7 barrel, and if you think about it, the shorter you go on that, if you look at a mid-length gas 13.7 gun, and that's what one is right here, that's a mid-length 13.7 Suns gun, and there is very little. There's what
4 inches
maybe 3 inches in front of that barrel, maybe. You know,
right, past the gas port.
Not a lot of dwell time, right? So that's where the A5 helps out in that as well. Is you don't have a lot of dwell time, and the dwell time is the space between the gas port of the barrel and the end of the barrel. So that's kind of what that's one of the things that when you run a mid-length gas system on a short dwell time gun, running a carbine length gas or running a carbine length buffer tube, it gets a little finicky, and sometimes they have trouble running. Changing over to an A5 system kind of alleviates that.
Yeah, it definitely changed. I mean, we've fixed guns just by changing buffer system on.
Yeah.
Right, so you get one in and they're like, it won't cycle. Just refuses to cycle. I've tried ammo after ammo, and literally we change the buffer system out, take it to the range, and the gun shoots phenomenally.
Yep.
And you can feel the difference too. Like
Yep.
it's not just easier on the gun; it's easier on us, as shooters, and it's easier on the wear of your gun. Mm-hmm. Right.
It is not near as violent.
Yeah. Now you're stepping up from a $60 carbine kit to a $160 A5 kit, but then again, you're getting a better gun that's going to run more reliably.
Yeah.
And I mean overall, like you can buy a $600 gun, or you can spend. I think an average build for us is about $1,400.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
And then there's everything in between, right? Like
Yeah.
a Springfield Saint's going to run you $900,000.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we tell people if your budget's $600, then buy a reticle, buy a Diamondback.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually guys that's not shooting a lot anyway.
Right.
But if you're going to spend $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 on a gun, well, a couple hundred more bucks, we're building something that is not only better to start with, but is going to last you a lot longer and be a lot more accurate because we're putting the correct metallurgical parts and tolerance related parts. And,
Oh yeah.
we've built a bunch of guns with a bunch of different parts. We know what works, we know what doesn't.
Right.
Like when we started, we've built guns that just don't work. Like we've got bolt carriers sitting in the back right now that won't even chamber, and we bought quite a few of them, and they will not even chamber
Yeah,
around.
just out of spec.
Yeah,
they're just,
out of spec. Needless to
Yeah.
say, we don't use them anymore. So,
yeah.
and it doesn't have to be Suns. I mean, there's other companies, BCM, Knights Armament.
Yeah.
There's some good companies out there. But if you, like Trey said earlier, buy once, cry once, right?
Yeah.
And we tell people, and we push Suns a lot because everything with their name on it's got a lifetime warranty on it.
Yeah.
Like not only is it good parts built correctly, but if you break it, they replace it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter why.
No.
Doesn't
if
matter
you
how.
laid your gun next to your pickup after a training
run over
session
it.
and drove over it and crushed it, they will literally send you a new gun.
Like they just replace it, and like I said, it's a little bit, a few $100.
Yeah.
All right. Now, and if we build it, we're gonna fix it for free as long as if it's our fault. We've never had one that's our fault.
Mm-hmm.
If you run over with a truck, yeah, we're gonna charge you a little bit to put it back together, but you're saving on, let's say you bent the receiver, bent the buffer tube, bent the barrel. Well, okay, well all that's free.
Yep.
So, and like I said, we're not trying to sell stuff. It's just talk we get. We get in this a lot because we build a lot of guns. So we talk to a lot of people. We get phone calls. Well, what do you think I should do like this? So, and same thing, you can go into triggers. We use a lot of Rise Armament triggers. Trey hates drop-in triggers in general.
I do.
You
I'm
know,
just not a fan of them.
And he's got a good point. I guess if you're out shooting the gun for fun, drop-in trigger is great. They're light, they're short, but if you've got a fighting gun, you can't replace parts in a drop-in trigger, right? And that's your biggest thing against them.
Well, it's that, but I've seen a lot of under pretty significant use. I've seen a lot of do what?
I'm listening.
I've seen a lot of drop-in triggers just not do as well as a standard, kind of a fighting style trigger, ALG,
Right.
Geisley, whatever,
Yeah.
mil spec, doesn't matter. Those, I look at I think about, I try to keep it as simple as possible. I look at, back when Armalite and Colt and stuff started building these systems, like there was pages and pages and hours and thousands and hundreds of thousands of hours that went into the testing and T&E of these systems, and this is what works, and this is what works in austere environments, and you start changing things up like drop-in triggers and things like that. That's fine, but you gotta think about, okay, can I fix that trigger if trigger pin walks out or something spring breaks, or a lot of the drop-in triggers are screwed into the side. They've got a little set screw on either side of the pin that goes through the housing. Well, what if that screw falls out? What if somebody forgot to Loctite it and you put that trigger in, and next thing you know, you got a trigger pin that walked out? Well, you're just down. You can't do anything with that.
I mean, I have guns with drop-ins, but I also have a lower that's, standard trigger.
That's fine.
And
Yeah.
we carry parts.
Yeah.
We always carry parts. I mean,
Yeah.
so because stuff's gonna break.
Yes.
Even the good stuff's gonna
Yes.
break.
Yep.
When you shoot it enough.
There's a lifespan on
Yeah.
stuff, and a lot of people don't realize. I mean, the springs, buffer springs, extractor springs, gas rings. Those are parts that are designed to wear and to be replaced in certain intervals on that gun. So, I don't know. Let's just pick one. Let's talk about the gas. Let's talk about the extractor. So the extractor and the spring is usually between 5,000 and 10,000 rounds. Somewhere in there is where,
Which
for
none
years,
of us change it at 5 or
shit,
10,000.
no, we just run it till it
Till it breaks.
It quit. I got to put a new, so I keep a salt mod kit handy. It's like, hey, I got a spring and a new black little insert thingy and an O-ring and a new extractor, and it's a 5-minute fix, right? You just throw it in the gun and you're good to go. So, buffer springs, they're not going to last forever. He's like, oh, my gun started running slow. I run my gun hard. I run suppressed. Have a high round count on it. Might be somewhere in the 20,000 round neighborhood. Okay, man, it's time to change that buffer spring.
Yeah,
it's like
it's cheap parts.
it is. It's cheap.
It's usually it's springs.
Yeah, I just literally changed the other day. I changed the gas rings on my old LNT because I was like, I don't know how many thousands of rounds that thing's had through it, and I set the bolt on the table, it just went clunk and just collapsed, and that's a good way for folks that don't know any better. That's a good way to test if your
gas rings are
if your
good.
gas rings are good. If you take a bolt, you have one?
Not sitting here, no.
No. So if you take a bolt and extend it, the bolt carrier group, extend the bolt out of the carrier, pull it all the way down, and then set it on a table. If it stands up and holds in place, then your rings are probably okay. If you set it on the table and let go of it, and the carrier just collapses down on the bolt, yeah, it's time for the rings.
Actually, I do have one. So this is a 6.5 Grinnell bolt, but yeah, basically you want to extend it out, and you should be able to, if you can see that,
Yeah.
and it doesn't fall down. If you set it down and it goes down, then it's time to replace gas rings.
Yeah.
So, and
that doesn't. And what's funny is that doesn't necessarily mean the gun wouldn't run. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, run. It's just inefficient at that point.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But but stuff like that's simple.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. With once again, you get back to expensive stuff. Well, not even expensive, but good stuff versus little stuff. Those springs are. So like a good bolt's usually going to have the 5 coil extractor spring in it.
Yeah.
your cheap stuff's gonna have a 4 coil. It's gonna wear out faster.
Yeah, if
right?
you look at a
Like,
lot of the really, really good bolts built out there, when you pull the extractor out, there's usually, it doesn't necessarily be all, they're not all what they call the SOP mod spec, which is the Special Operations Peculiar Modification. It's what SOP mod stands for, I think, is
Right.
back in the day when they started doing all this cool stuff and swapping out uppers and barrels and suppressors and optics and things. Most of those guns had under the extractor on the bolt, they had an O-ring, a little rubber black O-ring
with a 4 coil spring.
with a 4 or 5 coil spring. Can't remember which one it was, but then it had a little black insert that goes inside the spring, and then it's a pain in the butt sometimes to get that in and get the pin back into the bolt.
Right.
You got to really push hard. The reason for that is they want, no matter what happens, you need to be able to extract that case. No matter what happened in the chamber, that case still needs to come out.
Right.
And so they put a lot of tension and a lot of forethought into that, so that the tension on that case rim
Right.
is sufficient enough that you can, I'm sure everybody's probably had to mortar a gun,
Right. Oh yeah.
Everybody's had to mortar a gun, right? Collapse the stock, put it on the ground, put your fingers on the charging handle, bam, and bump it, right? Well, if you've got a weak extractor and a weak spring, or the extractor's smooth, like it's no longer sharp, it's not going to grab that case and pull it off.
Yeah,
It's going to slip
over,
off
yeah.
of it every time. It's going to make it much more of a pain in the butt to get that crappy ammo, and it's usually a product of crappy ammo, right? Or dirty gun.
Or your gassing is wrong on the
Or your
gun.
gas is as wrong as your gun.
Because
So
if you try to pull it out too fast, your brass is expanded,
right,
and you're trying to pull it out before the bat. So brass expands very fast, but it
Yeah.
also shrinks back down very fast.
right.
But if you try to pull it out too fast while it's still expanded, it'll get stuck case.
Yeah, but all right. Now just think about what you just said. All right. So if you've got a properly gassed gun,
Right.
okay, you've got a good bolt carrier group and a good buffer system. Well, really, the only thing that can be is an ammo issue.
At that point.
Okay, so if I know that all my, I'm thinking, okay, bolt carrier group, buffer system, good barrel, ammo. Okay, out of the scenarios that could happen in that particular problem. Well, if I built the crap correctly the first time,
Yeah.
well, that eliminates the bolt carrier group, that eliminates the buffer system, that eliminates the barrel. Now I'm just down to ammo problem.
Yeah.
So if I have to mortar a gun, it's probably about a 98% chance it's ammo related, right?
Right.
So you just mortar it and continue on with your thing.
Right.
I mean, yeah, and that's just one of those deals where, if you start with the process of building yourself a decent gun to begin with, then you kind of eliminate troubleshooting when you have trouble. Different types of malfunctions and things. If the gun is done correctly and the gun's in good shape, then it really pretty much there's only kind of two things that could be going on here.
Yeah, narrows
It's either
it
a
down.
magazine related issue as far as feeding,
Right.
or it's a ammo related issue as far as chambering. If that makes sense. It kind of eliminates a lot of stuff,
Right.
But if you've got what I call the wish.com gun, then you still have to
don't
think
know.
through all these processes, right? You still have to think about, okay, I got this.
So, so what's and I probably already know your answer, what's the number one cause of a gun not cycling that you've seen?
Oh gosh.
Like not even necessarily mechanical, just in general, what's the number one thing that you've seen cause AR style?
Lubrication. Lack of lubrication. Yeah.
That's what I figured you were going to say.
Yeah, it's lack of lubrication.
Lube your guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't over lube them. They're
Yeah.
made to be wet.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, if a customer comes in and buys a gun, it's like, let me have that, get it. I just lube it for them, so they don't have to think about it the first time. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm lubing it. Man, it's awful wet. I'm going, it's brand new. Like, should be.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to over lube it. You're not going to hurt it.
Yeah.
You can't run these guns dry. In pretty much any environment will cause these guns to not run well if you don't lube them.
Yeah, because we've yet to teach a class where a gun hasn't gone down.
No, they always do. Yeah.
And then-
Somebody's gun goes down for
And
something.
it's one of two things: either it's broke, or it's dry.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, that's literally the two problems you see. It's broke or dry.
Right.
And we usually have parts to fix it, fortunately.
Right.
And it's not always cheap guns, by the way.
No.
Usually it is. But I mean, you have expensive guns break, but they're old, they've been run, so
Yeah.
it's normal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you see it, but lube is a lot of times it's lube.
Yeah.
We've seen that a lot.
It is.
So if you were building a gun today, right? What would be, what's the best way to word this? What would be the most important parts to you if you were building a gun today? Like when you were selecting parts.
Well, I mean, it's like I said before, it's clearly going to be bolt carrier group. It's going to be barrel. It's going to be
Right.
gas system or buffer system. Okay.
Right.
And then I'm going to add a fourth one to that, and it's going to be handguard.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. And the reason I'm going to add handguard is what holds these guns together? Well, it's the handguard barrel nut, right?
Right.
So, you know, there are some really, really crappy handguards out there that have really, really subpar metallurgy in their barrel nuts. So the barrel nut is the thing that torques the barrel to the upper receiver to, you know, make everything cohesive and
Right.
work. And if that is not done correctly, then you're going to have all kinds of problems. I've seen guns come in and we pull the handguard off and the barrel nut is just hand tight.
Yeah.
And
we've
I've seen
had handguards that the barrel nut's tight and the handguard just.
I've
doesn't
had
stay
them where
on,
you
like,
grab
it
you
just-
grab the upper receiver in the barrel and go like
Yeah.
you can move it a 1/16 of an inch.
Which is very dangerous.
That's oh my gosh! I just like oh
For people who don't know, it's really
yeah.
dangerous.
Talk about a headspace nightmare. Like that's
Yeah.
just awful. Just thinking about that. But a lot of the time a lot of the time it's the lack of the knowledge on the guy that's building it, knowing that there is specific torque specifications.
Right.
Even on a good barrel nut, you have to torque it correctly. And you have to
Right.
use the right sequences, and you have to do it correctly to make it effective. But also, there's a lot of handguards out there that are a lot cheaper than others. Okay, and this is another thing. Is when we're talking about buy once, cry once. If you pick a good handguard
Yeah.
that's made by a reputable company that knows what it's going, that understands this,
Should never need another one.
you don't need another one. Okay, so the handguard is paramount to the upper receiver. Okay, or not the handguard, but the barrel nut is
Right.
paramount to the upper receiver being built correctly. But that's also what stabilizes the handguard for whatever else kind of accessories you want to add to it. So
Yeah,
if you
'cause
got
it's-
guys that are out trying to do night vision CQB classes and you're running IR lasers and you're running optics or not optics, but like IR lasers and flashlights and things like that, that handguard needs to be rigid and solid, right? There
And
needs
it-
to be
and it-
no deviation.
It needs to be big enough too.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want is you go to put an M-lock on and you got a screw coming through touching the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Because anything touches the barrel,
Yeah.
it throws off harmonics.
Yeah.
It throws off accuracy.
Yeah,
So
and I see that a lot too. I see a lot of
Yeah.
guys are like they'll go to the range after they build their new gun, and they're like, "Man, I was shooting my gun, and it's not printing right. Like it's not accurate. Like it's throwing shots and blah blah blah." And there's a couple of things that I look at first. If the gun's functioning fine, it's just not accurate.
first thing is you tell them how much they suck. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's not usually the problem.
I look kind of like down if they've got a bunch of accessories hanging on their rifle.
Right.
First thing I do is I look to see if any screws are going through it, making contact with the gas block or the barrel.
Right.
I've seen it. Like I've seen dudes do it. Well, it's pushing that barrel. It's
Right.
pushing that barrel off to one side or the other, depending on where that accessory is attached. You know.
And if you want to see the effects of that, a good way is we've learned go shoot a 9-hole barricade.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll really see what like putting torque on a gun and stuff.
Right.
It makes people feel bad real quick because you don't think about it.
Well, and I know, but that's one of the, a 9-hole barricade drill is a great one because you're trying to shoot through these little slots, and if you can't get your gun in there and not have your barrel touch any of the thing, that's the whole trick. Is the barrel can't touch anything. especially
'cause
if you're
it'll
really,
throw way off.
especially if you're really cranking on it and leaning into it, and you know you got your hand up there holding against the barricade and you're shooting or whatever. If that barrel is touching that barricade at all, it's going to throw the shots. Like that barrel's going to deflect.
Like pretty good bit too. It's not just a little bit.
Oh no,
I
I've seen
mean,
it. I throw it 8, 10 inches off at 50 yards.
Yeah,
you know,
it's-
shooting a
it's
9-0 drill.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But it goes back to, I guess, what we're talking about. You
But
know,
yeah,
right
so
handguard, stuff touching.
handguard is really important in the simple fact that I've seen guns come in with handguards that have aluminum barrel nuts,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, this is gross. Okay, you have aluminum upper receiver. Okay,
Right.
you have an aluminum handguard,
Right.
and you have aluminum barrel nut, which is terrible. Okay, aluminum barrel nut, aluminum handguard.
Right.
You go to thread that barrel nut onto that handguard, and when you go to torque it, it just absolutely mars the threads up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It
galling,
galls them,
yeah.
and then the next time you ever have to take that handguard back off again, I've done this, and it's unfortunate for the customer because I've had to peel these barrel nuts off these upper receivers before, and it just peels the threads off with it because those aluminum threads don't like to mate with each other,
Or it doesn't come off.
or it won't come
It
off.
won't
I
come
mean,
off.
yeah, I've seen I've seen some unfortunate stuff that's
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I just, you know, sorry, dude. Now you're in an upper receiver because it just ate it,
Yeah.
and we can't get this barrel nut off. So now you need a barrel, and but a good handguard is going to have a really good machined, usually high level stainless steel barrel nut.
Right.
And that barrel nut, once you use the processes, and we use a specific torque spec for that, we kind of like torque it, break it loose, torque it, break it loose, and retorque it again. You get the threads on the receiver to kind of align with the grooves of the stainless steel barrel nut,
Right.
and by doing that, you now don't have to worry about that galling. So, I've shot my barrel out after 40,000, 50,000 rounds. It's time to take the barrel off. The barrel will come off because the barrel nut will come off, right?
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's unfortunate. One of those things I've seen to happen. But if you get a good handguard, that's never an issue. I've never seen that be an issue. Like, and
Yeah, because we see some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Like we do. So, cool. I think we've covered a good bit of it.
yeah,
So, yeah, so comments. Let us know if you got any questions. And this is all our opinions, right? So, if you disagree, let us know. We'll defend what we think. I think we got enough experience with it. But yeah, like and subscribe. We should probably start doing this a little more frequently. Something to listen to while you're driving in the truck. I mean, that's what I do. So,
sure.
I appreciate it, Trey.
You bet.
We'll pick a topic for next week. If anybody's got any ideas, let us know.
All right.
We talk about everything. So
Y'all have a good Christmas.
yeah, Merry